For most of you, now that your model is complete, the next step would be to present the model to someone who is not familiar with the project. You can accomplish this with Viewports, which will allow you to present various views and other information of your project in one sheet layer or multiple sheet layers. Before you move forward, take a moment to make all of the design layers visible, except for Scan 1 and Scan 2. You should still be in a 3D view and rendered in OpenGL. If not, go ahead and do this now. Then, use the flyover tool or switch between the Standard Views menu in the view bar to see the building in its entirety. You should notice that you can currently see all levels of this building, including the foundation and footing. Typically, you would have some sort of site or ground along with the building in order to help better visualize the product. Let's quickly create an extrude to serve as the site or ground for this building. First, go to Tools, Organization, and go to the Design Layers tab. Select the Foundation Design Layer and click New. Name the new design layer Site and make sure the option Edit Properties After Creation is checked. Click OK, and when the dialog box Edit Design Layers appears, set the elevation field to -6.5 inches. Click OK to return to the list of design layers. The new design layer should be the active layer. Also, set design layers Foundation and Footing to Invisible. Then click OK to return to the drawing area. Go to a top plan view. Additionally, in the navigation palette, set the Layer Options drop-down menu to Active Only. In the Basic Tool palette, double-click the Rectangle tool to open the Create Object dialog box. When the dialog box appears, set the Width field to 1024 feet and the Height field to 1024 feet. Also, choose the middle point for the control position. Uncheck the option Position at Next Click and set the X and Y fields to 0. And click OK to create the rectangle at the coordinates 0, 0. Now, apply a shade of yellow to the rectangle. Before you extrude this rectangle, you need to clip a circle for the circular floor from the lecture hall. Since the floor extrudes below 0, if you didn't clip a portion for this floor, the site extrude would cut directly through your building at this location. To clip the circle from correct location on the rectangle, change the layer options in the navigation palette to Show Snap Others, and make all design layers invisible except Slab 1 and Site. Select the Circle tool from the Basic Tool palette and enable Radius mode in the toolbar. Zoom to the circular floor, and when the cursor cue Center appears, click to set the center point of the circle. Now, click at the outer edge of the floor to create the circle. In the navigation palette, change the layer options back to Active Only. Press the X key to switch to the Selection tool. Hold the Shift key and select both the rectangle and the circle. With both objects selected, right-click on either one of the objects and choose Clip Surface from the context menu. After performing the clip command, only the circle should be highlighted. Press the Delete key to remove the circle and view the hole created in the new polygon. Now you can select that polygon and go to Model, Extrude. In the Create Extrude dialog box, enter 6.25 inches in the extrusion field and click OK to create the extrude. Change the layer options in the navigation palette to Show Snap Others and turn on the Floor 1 design layer. Then, quickly render in OpenGL and use the flyover tool. You'll see the slab cut through your extrude that represents the ground. Let's go back to the top plane view by pressing the 0 key so we can move on to creating viewports. Although not entirely necessary, Most users usually set the desired visibilities in the design layers for their first viewport. For your first viewport, you should be in a top plan view and make only design layers Floor 1 and Slab 1 visible. It's not important which design layer is active, as long as it's one of the design layers that is currently visible. After setting your design layer visibilities accordingly, go to View, Create Viewport. In the resulting dialog box, name the viewport Floor Plan 1. Also, choose New Sheet Layer from the Create On Layer drop-down menu. This should populate another dialog box. In the New Sheet Layer dialog, set the Sheet Number field to A1 and the Sheet Title field to First Floor Plan. Click OK twice to create the viewport on your sheet layer. As you can see from the Object Info palette, the entire design is now seen as one viewport. Viewports can display entire as well as cropped views of a drawing, with specified layer and class visibility settings, projection, render mode, and orientation parameters. If you were to make changes to this model from the design layer, the viewports could easily be updated to reflect the changes. Since sheet layers can display more than viewports to present your final project, let's go ahead and add a title block and a sheet border as well. Select the Sheet Border tool from the DIMS Notes toolset, and double-click anywhere on the sheet layer. When the Sheet Border Preferences dialog box opens, choose Fit to Page for the sheet size, and make sure the option Lock to Page Center is checked. This is why your initial placement of the sheet border was not important. Also, click the button labeled None to choose your title block. From the default symbol folder, choose the symbol US Arch NCS2 and click OK twice to place the title block. Zoom to the bottom right corner where the title block is displayed. Now, double-click the sheet border to edit the title block fields. All of the fields listed under the Sheet tab are specific to each sheet layer, while the fields under the Project field remain the same on each layer. Notice that the Sheet Number and Sheet Title Line 1 fields are already populated, as these fields are pulled from the dataset when you created the new sheet layer. Let's go through quickly and set the rest of this fields appropriately. Make fields Sheet Title Line 1 and Sheet Title Line blank. Enter As Noted in the Sheet Scale field. You can enter whatever you like for the consultant name and address fields, but enter your name in the Drawn By field. Input information in the Reviewed By, Submitted By, and Checked By fields if you desire, but it's also fine to leave these blank. Input today's date for the Date field. If you like, you can add more information under the Project tab, but at this point you can click OK to display the changes in the title block. You might notice the viewport and the sheet border overlap slightly, but you can fix this by just clicking and dragging the viewport upward. Alternatively, you can nudge the viewport by holding down the Shift key and tapping the appropriate directional arrow on your keyboard. Aside from editing the title block, you can also edit the attributes of the sheet border by clicking the Border Settings button in the Object Info palette. For this project, we're going to change the border's margins. When the dialog box opens, set the left field under margins to 1 inch, and all the remaining fields under margins to 0.5 inches. Once complete, click OK to update the changes to the sheet border and return to the drawing area. Also in the Object Info palette, uncheck the option Show Grids to simplify the border. To help keep your model organized, you can also annotate and add dimensions to your viewports, so you don't have to clutter your design layers with these things. To add annotations, double-click the viewport and choose Annotations from the Edit Viewport dialog box. This will take you to Annotation Edit mode. Here you cannot directly modify any of the objects that reside in the design layer. You can only add or remove new information or objects. The first object you're going to add to the annotations is a drawing label. Activate the Drawing Label tool from the DIMS Notes toolset and click once near the middle of the page, below the viewport, but above the sheet layer. This first click sets the drawing label's bubble location. Now set the text rotation by moving your cursor to the right while holding the Shift key. When the text is horizontal, click once more to create the drawing label, then click OK if the Object Properties dialog box appears. Once the drawing label is completed, go to the Object Info palette and change the Drawing Title field to First Floor Plan. After making this change, click Exit Viewport Annotations in the top right corner of the drawing. And that's it for the first viewport. Now let's create another viewport displaying different information. Last time you created the viewport based on visibilities from the design layers. This time, however, just go to the Navigation palette and right-click Sheet Layer 1, First Floor Plan, and choose Duplicate. Notice that the new sheet layer is automatically made the active sheet layer, and is also automatically numbered A2, but the sheet title still shows First Floor Plan. To change this, right-click the duplicated sheet layer and choose Edit. Then change the sheet title field to Second Floor Plan and click OK. Notice in the title block that both of these fields have been updated to reflect the changes. You'll also need to update the drawing label. Double-click the viewport and choose Annotations from the Edit Viewport dialog box, then click OK. Now press the X key, switch to the Selection tool, and select the drawing label at the bottom of the page. In the Object Info palette, change the Drawing Label field to Second Floor Plan. After you make the change, click the Exit Viewport Annotations button. The information in this sheet layer is now correct, but you still need to change the actual viewport to display the second floor. Select the viewport and click on the Layers button in the Object Info palette. In the Viewport Layer Properties dialog box, make Design Layers Floor 2, Slab 2, and Roof the only visible layers. Also, drag Design Layer Roof by its number below Slab 2 and click OK to show the changes in the viewport. Now the plan views for both floors are complete. Next, we'll move on to creating elevations of the building. Although you could again simply duplicate an existing sheet layer in Viewport to make these elevations, this time you'll start from the design layer. In the Navigation palette, make Design Layer Slab 1 active. Additionally, set all design layers to visible except for Design Layers Site, Footing, and the 2 Scan layers. Make sure Unified View is enabled in the view bar, and choose Front from the Standard Views menu in the view bar as well. Next, go to View, Create Viewport. In the Create Viewport dialog box, choose New Sheet Layer from the Create On Layer drop-down menu. When the new dialog box appears, set the sheet number to A10 and the sheet title to Elevation 1. Then click OK to return to the previous dialog box. Choose Hidden Line from the Render menu and click OK to create the viewport. Now, right-click the viewport and choose Edit Annotations. Just like with the other viewports, activate the Drawing Label tool and insert a drawing label below the viewport. This time, input North Elevation in the Drawing Title field in the Object Info palette. Click Exit Viewport Annotations at the top right to return to the sheet layer. You'll be adding another viewport to this sheet layer, so switch to the Selection tool and move this viewport to the top half of the page, After moving the viewport upward, hold the Option key on Macintosh or the Alt key on Windows, and move your cursor to the existing viewport. You should see the cursor now has a small plus sign to indicate that a duplicate object will be created. So click and drag the viewport downward to the bottom half of the page, then release your mouse button to create the duplicate viewport. After the duplicate is created, you can release the Option or Alt key. Right-click the duplicate viewport and choose Edit Annotations. Select the drawing label and change the drawing title field in the Object Info palette to South Elevation. Click Exit Viewport Annotations when you're finished. With the viewport still selected, change the View drop-down menu in the Object Info palette to Back. Notice that the viewports have a red and white stripe displayed around their border to indicate that the viewport needs to be updated. To update a viewport, simply click the Update button in the Object Info palette. While the viewport is selected, you can also select multiple viewports and update them at one time. Since you've made plan views and elevation views, let's create some sections of your model with section viewports. Section viewports can be created from design layers of existing viewports. For this model, you'll start from the design layers. Make the roof design layer the active layer, and make all layers visible except design layers Site, Scan 1, and Scan 2. Additionally, switch to a top plan view in the view bar. Now, go to View, Create Section Viewport. Instead of the Create Viewport dialog box populating immediately, you need to tell Vectorworks where the section line should be and which side of the section plane to show. First, to draw the section line, snap to the center point of the circular floor in the auditorium. Hold your cursor there until the smart point is acquired. Once the smart point is acquired, move your cursor upward along the extension line from the smart point. Once you pass the top edge of the building, click to set the first point. Now, hold the Shift key and move your cursor downward until you pass the bottom edge of the building and click again. Lastly, move your cursor to the right and double-click. This last click determines which side of the section line will be displayed in the viewport. After drawing the section line, the Create Section Viewport dialog box will populate. Again, choose New Sheet Layer from the Create On Layer drop-down menu. Name the sheet layer Section 1 and set the sheet layer number to A30. Then click OK twice to create your section viewport. When creating section viewports, a drawing label is automatically created, but you'll still need to change the name to something suitable for the view. Instead of editing the viewport annotations to reach the drawing label, you can simply select the viewport and input Section through Auditorium into the drawing title field in the Object Info palette for the section viewport. When you hit Enter, you'll see that the drawing label updates too. You're going to place 2 section viewports on this sheet layer as well. So click and drag the section viewport toward the top half of the page. After moving the section viewport to its new location, go to Edit, Duplicate. This is another option you have for duplicating objects. Now simply click and drag the viewport to the lower half of the page. Currently, this section is showing only the right side of the building from the section line. With this section viewport, you'll flip it to show the left side of the building from the section line. First, in the Object Info palette, change the drawing title field to Section through Auditorium looking south. Again, notice the drawing label also updates when you make this change. Next, click the Reverse Direction button at the bottom of the Object Info palette. This changes the direction of the section line so that it now shows the left side of the section. Remember, when you see this red and white stripe around your viewport, you need to update it. So click the Update button in the Object Info palette to see what the section looked like on the other side of the viewport. In addition to showing your building section in this orthogonal view, You can also show the section with other projections, like perspective and oblique. To do this, go to the Object Info palette, and for this example, choose Perspective from the Projection drop-down menu. From the Perspective Type drop-down menu, you can use a default value or set a value yourself from the perspective distance by choosing Custom. For this instance, choose Custom and set the perspective distance field to 30. Then click the Update button to view your changes. After changing the projection, click and drag the viewport back to an appropriate location on the page. Also, right-click this section viewport and choose Edit Annotations so that you can click and drag the drawing label back to its original location below the viewport. When you exit the Edit Annotations view, the building sections will be complete. Now let's crop an existing viewport and change its rendering style. For this example, go to sheet layer A10, which has the building elevation views. All levels of the building are currently showing in both viewports, but let's change the bottom viewport so that only the levels above the site or at ground level are visible. First, select the bottom viewport and click the Layers button. Set the design layer Site to Visible. All layers listed below this design layer should be invisible. The viewport needs to be updated now, so click the Update button to do so. You can see that the ground extrude currently extends much further than the page boundary, and that the circular floor from the auditorium is protruding through the bottom. The best way to fix this is to crop the viewport. To crop the viewport, right-click or double-click the viewport and choose Edit Viewport Crop. Then, using any 2D shape, in this case a rectangle, draw your desired crop box. In this case, start your rectangle a little above the left corner of the building. Then, move the cursor to the bottom edge of the ground extrude, but make sure it extends a little past the building edge on the right. Then click to create the viewport crop. When you click Exit Viewport Crop, you should have something similar to this. Thus far, all of the viewports have been rendered in the hidden line rendering, but you can choose any rendering style you want for a viewport, and also use them in combination. For example, with the bottom viewport still selected, choose OpenGL from the Background Render drop-down menu in the Object Info palette. Also, set the Foreground Render drop-down menu to Hidden Line Rendering, and click the Foreground Render Settings button. In the resulting dialog box, check the options Generate Intersecting Line and Sketch Hidden Line Results. Also, choose Certain for the sketch style. Click OK and click the Update button in the Object Info palette to see the viewport's new rendering style. Another important part of annotating your viewport is adding dimensions, which you'll do now. To start, make sheet layer A1 the active layer in the navigation palette. Next, double-click the viewport and select Edit Annotations from the dialog box. From here, you could use the Dimension tool to dimension specific portions of your drawing, but here's a quicker approach. Go to AEC, Dimension Exterior Walls. When the Dimension Exterior Walls dialog box appears, choose Floor 1 from the Dimension the Wall on this layer drop-down menu. Additionally, put 12 inches into the Apply to Dims Less Than field, and click OK to dimension the walls. In some instances, there may be too many dimensions in a particular area, but you can easily select the extraneous dimensions and delete them as shown here. Use this as a guide for which dimensions can be removed. When complete, your viewport should look similar to this. If the drawing label appears to be in the way of some of the dimensions, just nudge it downward some. Once you're satisfied with the dimensions, click the Exit Viewport Annotations button. Your viewport is complete, but now it's a little large for the page because of the dimensions. With viewports, you can also change their scale while keeping the scale of the model of the design layer intact. To change the viewport's scale, go to the Object Info palette. Choose either a default scale from the Scale drop-down menu, or choose Custom, which you'll do for this example. Then input 75 in the Custom Scale dialog box. After pressing Enter, you'll see the viewport scale down accordingly. Reposition the viewport within the sheet border and you're done dimensioning. You've created a plan, elevation, and section views of your building. The last viewport you'll create will be a simple rendered perspective of the building. You'll need to return to a design layer to create your perspective view. So make the design layer Floor 1 the active layer from the View bar. Next, go to View, Set 3D View, and draw a line from the far top left of the drawing area to the north pad entrance. When the Set 3D View dialog box appears, set both the Viewer Height field and the Look Toward Height field to 5 feet. Also, choose Normal from the Perspective drop-down menu and click OK. Then, render in OpenGL. Here's the perspective view. Notice again that you don't need to show the entire ground extrude in the viewport, so crop it before making the viewport. To do this, select the Rectangle tool from the Basic Tool palette and draw your crop from the top left, just beyond the building edge, to the bottom right of the ground extrude, beyond the building's right edge. Now, with the rectangle selected, go to View, Create Viewport. You should see a prompt asking if you want to use the selected object as a crop. Click Yes, and the Create Viewport dialog box will appear. First, name the viewport Perspective 1. Then, create a new sheet layer with the sheet number A-0 and the title Perspective View. Click OK to create the viewport. With the viewport selected, set the Background Render drop-down menu to OpenGL and click the Background Settings button in the Object Info palette. When the dialog box appears, set the Detail drop-down menu to Very High and check the option Use Anti-Aliasing. Then click OK to return to the sheet layer. Also, set the Foreground Render to Hidden Line and click the Foreground Render button in the Object Info palette. Make sure the option Generate Intersecting Lines is checked and click OK. Lastly, click the Update button in the Object Info palette to see the rendering. If you have RenderWorks, you can set the background render to Final Quality RenderWorks. The RenderWorks background to an HDRI, and you'll get something similar to this. Now the project is complete. You can continue to add to this project if you like by adding sheet borders and dimensions, but from this point you can also output your project for printing. There are several ways to do this. You could simply go to File, Print, and send the current page to your printer. Normally, if you're outporting a large format, it's best to create a PDF first and then print that PDF. To do this, go to File, Export, Export PDF. Additionally, if you want to export all of your sheet layers or viewports at once, you can use the Batch Export command. Here you can choose all or just specific sheets to export to the PDF. The options for setting up pages and printing can vary greatly from printer to printer, so for more specifics, please see the related videos on exporting to PDF and printing. You have now completed the Architect's Getting Started guide. This guide just scratches the surface of the functionality of this product. Use this guide as a stepping stone to further exploration of Architect's capabilities.